Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and live on a Tuesday here for you. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us a part of your lovely evening. Boy, free agency in the NFL is just going absolutely nuts, and we're all here for it. Got two interviews here for you tonight. We're going to be chopping it up with a good friend of mine, John Buttner, A1 Combat, Featherweight division fighter, is going to be joining us. And, of course, Evan Renaerts from Two Guys and Hockey Talk is going to be talking with us because I've got my top 10 I need to share with all of you here on the show. Post-trade deadline in the NHL has been absolutely great, and the NFL just continues to cook, and I'm all for it. So really, really excited about it. So let me just start with this here for a few minutes before we bring up our good guest here on the show. So NFL free agency yesterday, it was a maniac Monday, and we were all here for it. So many different signings, so many different trades. But one of them up in particular really caught my eye that I think is a beautiful and ideal fit, at least all except for one. So former Giants running back Tiki Barber went to social media, like most of America nowadays, that's got something to weigh on their mind, basically went on Twitter and said and reacted to the signing of Saquon Barkley to the Philadelphia Eagles. I think it was a great fit. But unfortunately, Tiki Barber thinks otherwise. As he basically said, quote unquote, "How dare you, Saquon? Shame on you. You are dead to us and you are dead to me." You really think Saquon really gives a damn about what you think and what I say? Probably not. But to be honest, if you want to be yelling and screaming and being an idiot on social media, maybe you should talk to the Giants front office. It's part of the reason that this whole debacle for the Giants has been happening. I've been saying this multiple times. You paid the wrong guy. Daniel Jones is not the answer. And Saquon Barkley was every part of your offense. You get Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. You got Darius Slayton, a decent wide receiver. And then you have Darren Waller, who you're basically practically paying about minimal. That's all you're paying for. But you pay high money. Look at why the Cowboys didn't make any moves. They're as quiet as crickets. And this is day 2 in the free agent market. And so the thing about this is it's because look at Dak Prescott's contract. It's going up to $60 million a year. And what has Dak really done for the Cowboys? It's done nothing but cause headaches. It's caused migraines. It's caused everything. And on top of it, Mike McCarthy still can't get over the woes against Green Bay. And so the Giants follow this whole thing of Daniel Jones is the answer at number 6. He was clearly a reach. When has the last quarterback out of Duke ever become successful in the NFL? Probably none. I would maybe say if it was the case, if he was drafted today, Riley Leonard would have been the outlier, but he transferred to Notre Dame. Do I blame him? No. He wants to be in a better program. But stop this whole thing that Saquon Barkley, you're so unloyal. Man, we threw loyalty right out of the whole window years ago in the NFL. Saquon deserved better. What do the Philadelphia Eagles have? They've got a franchise quarterback. You've got 2 really good coordinators that I think this is a mulligan year for Nick Sirianni. And I've got A.J. Brown, I've got Devontae Smith, and I've got a healthy offensive line. Something I think the Giants should have paid attention to, don't you think? So you're yelling at the wrong guy. So you're going to cause all this hell, and you're just going to basically say shame on you to Saquon Barkley. I love the guy. Now, I honestly think you wouldn't have heard Tiki Barber go off like this if he went to the Chargers, would you? Or if he went to the Texans? But because it's a division rival, I understand. I get the frustration. But he don't care. He don't give a damn. And if you look in social media right now, they are clowning on Tiki Barber. And look, I'm not bashing the guy. I like him. I used to watch him when he was a pro. And I actually have one of his novels that I widely respect. Talks a lot about his life, all of this. But that's ridiculous. You're going to tell me you're going to spend all this time causing hell, cursing up a storm, and saying, oh, Saquon, we don't want to see you in New York. Did you even respect him when he was drafted by the Giants? And all those years that he had to spend hell because the offensive line was horrible and the quarterback was not right. You could blame Dave Gettleman. You could blame Joe Shane for that. Okay? Not Saquon's fault that the front office can't seem to get it right. But I just think this was a solid signing. I'm happy for Saquon. He gets a better deal and he gets paid, rightfully so. So let's love it. Let's love the deal. Let's not hate on it. If you want to scream at somebody, scream at your front office. I mean, ain't that what the rest of America is doing? They're screaming at Biden right now because of all these high prices and inflation and all the rest of it. You got somebody to scream at. I wouldn't be just screaming at your fellow neighbor. He's not going to care. He's just living his life just like you are. So come on, man. Who are you really fooling? All right. So I've got a really good guest on, and great friend of mine. Known him through high school. Known him as a big time wrestling athlete, and he went on heading to Sacramento and joining with Uriah Faber's gym. He's an up and coming MMA fighter. A1 Combat. I am so excited to bring him on. Glad he could take the time. And I was absolutely pumped and stoked when he ended up winning his last fight on decision. So joining us here on the show, my good friend, John Buttner. No, it's not every day that you basically get a chance to, interview an up-and-coming UFC fighter or UFC fighters for that matter. But it's always such a great quality content kind of thing that you have here on this show. And so, I got to say, man, I was absolutely stoked at your previous fight with the decision victory. Take me through to that, man. Recapping it. I mean, what was kind of the things you went through in that fight for 3 rounds, man? And what were some of the takeaways that you got out of it from your opponent?
Big takeaway for me was just a lot of good experience coming off a layoff. I got to fight him in his hometown, and I got the full 15 minutes in there, and that's experience that you just can't really replicate in the training room and such. So being able to go out there, feel all 3 rounds. That's the first time I've been able to do that in my professional career. And, the big thing for me going into that was just feeling more composed in the moment and not being in a rush. And I felt that I was able to do that in there. And overall, I think I gave a good performance for coming off of a big layoff. So,
yeah. So, and I will tell you, because like I said, knowing from the tenure that you had, as former high school teammates in football, and then seeing you in wrestling and all that, I knew that, I told a bunch of guys, I'm like, look, you need to keep an eye on this kid as far as a grappler and somebody that really does strike when the moment is right. and he's going to find any and every way to finish it off. And that, I thought that was the perfect thing. I thought it was a great toe-to-toe fight, and especially with the way that you kind of came up in a couple angles. I mean, like I said, and from a fighter's perspective, when you start to look at your opponent, I mean, there's got to be a bunch of things, because again, every opponent has a different strike ability, right? So they have a different focus, they have a different approach. What's kind of the thing when you face off against an opponent? Are there a few things you kind of analyze? Do you do that before fights, or are there some things you analyze even during those, and just do, quick short breaks to kind of help you to get the edge?
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to think of myself as an analytical mind in MMA, and I really enjoy studying the sport. And the way I see it is, it's a lot of like rock, paper, scissors. There's a lot of different styles, and just kind of being able to find the path of least resistance. And the more of a well-rounded MMA fighter you are, you're able to do that. So, I do my tape, and, I kind of create a game plan and things like that. But something that I did different this camp was just trying to focus more on what I was going to do rather than what they were going to do. Once I got a general gist of, how they like to fight, and where their strengths are, weaknesses, things like that, it's like, okay, I've got that in the back of my head going into camp. And then, I kind of like to refresh on it towards the end too, just to tune up some things specifically. But yeah, I think it's important to be able to be familiar with your opponent, and kind of be able to spot, their tendencies and things like that, to really, go into the fight as prepared as possible.
Absolutely. And you never want to be caught with your pants down, right? I mean, a lot of these fighters, even in boxing, you want to be the best like shape of your life, and you want to be in the best clear mind, especially when you're going into that ring, because by the time you're in, it's go time. It's ready to go for 3 or 5 rounds, into a fight like this. So coming from a very strong family background, they invested so much for you to being in the position that you are in now. And I'm so happy of the fact that, for one thing, for families to be very invested in what they've got. It's the most important thing. It's a very loving thing. And so for you, when you first got into, your first gym, take me back to that experience for you, man. I mean, this was something that, like, once you saw it, you're like, man, I want to be the absolute best that I can be. What was that experience for you in your first time?
Well, I think around 12 or 13 years old, MMA started catching my eye on TV, and it's something that I wanted to do, but my parents were very hesitant on getting me into, because I was a bit of a problem child as far as like fights in school goes, and things like that. But finally they decided to let me give it a shot, and went in, and I was hooked right from the get-go. It's just, I've always been an athlete, and like to really challenge myself. And I think that's something that I found out in high school, is I really enjoyed one-on-one competition through wrestling. And so then being able to, feel that in MMA as well, it just, I don't know, it just felt right. And, it was something that I just immediately was, like I said, I was hooked on it. I started taking the public bus to the gym every day, 2 times a day that summer. And, and just became, my overall passion in life, and something that I want to get the most out of in my youth.
So, as an experience being in, in MMA, and of course with different divisions, you're in the featherweight, and you're in the class where the expectation, and correct me if I'm wrong for this, but the expectation when seeing from guys from bantamweight and featherweight, these guys are cut, these guys are lean. But I think in the case in your instance, because you've had wrestling background, grappling such an important thing, especially if you're going for the submission strike, and you still bring in a balanced amount of power and strike ability to where you wear guys out, and to the point where now I got him right there in the corner. It's either submission, or he's just going to be tired out to where he's not going to strike. He's giving me everything he's got, but he's got nothing left in the tank. So in the featherweight division, I mean, to kind of, from your experiences, What's the expectation in that division? Are there kind of some things you can kind of break down what it is to basically fight in this division?
Well, I think it's a very dynamic division. I think 45 and 55 naturally bring a lot of people into it. It's very saturated. That's like, pretty much your average size in people. And it's got a good mix of the conditioning, the speed, the strength, everything like that. So they're always very fun divisions and packed with a lot of, talent. And mainly for me, like, I just try to make sure I can get the absolute most out of my frame, my conditioning, making sure the diet's on point and things like that. I like to bring my size and reach down to that division. And I think I'm very capable of fighting at 155 too. And that might be something that I do in the future. But to be honest, making 45 feels really easy for me. As long as I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing, like it's very doable. And yeah, I think it's important to just get the most out of your frame and, just be as optimal as possible when stepping into the cage. And I feel like at 145, I'm able to do that.
Absolutely. And, I always am curious about this because when I watch professional athletes, man, and like, especially even for fighters, when they got to go into cut mode or they got to basically get up and weight to be a part of that class, right? What's been your dietary plan? I've always been so curious of it. And for our audience here, because that's got to be a lot, man. And there's some of them I've talked to that like their dietary plans go from like, oh, it's pretty, thorough. It's pretty, it's pretty straightforward. And some of them, it's just strict as hell. So I'm really curious of it. Do you have a dietary plan for our audiences here that can get some experience behind it? And maybe they might make a change even in 2024, like what's that like for you and what's your plan?
For me personally, the way I go about it is to give like the rough 101 on like how I like to shape my diet. It's, as far as proteins go, I eat a lot of eggs, chicken, fish, steak, grass-fed, whole foods, organic, things like that. For fruits, I like cherries, blueberries, mangoes, dates. And for my carbs, I usually stick with sweet potatoes and rice. And I have to train anywhere from like 2 to 4, sometimes 5 times a day, depending. So a big thing for me is just really being able to recover from workout to workout and be able to get the most out of each individual workout. So a lot of that is revolved around being able to replenish the glycogen in my body. So that's a lot of simple carbs. And then I like to have my heavier meals later in the night after I'm done with all my, my training and things like that. And that's kind of how I go about it. I count my calories. Everything is precise. That way I make sure that, math is math, and that's just how I feel about, as far as losing body fat, numbers are numbers. And yeah, so I just follow that. And as long as I do it, it comes off nice and easy.
There you go, folks. Dietary 101 from there. I got to tell you, man, I was very happy and excited when I got to 205 myself. And my wife and I were trying to meet, our summer bod goals, right? So I'm having to try to, stay lean, maintain, and try to build more of that leaner muscle, but at the same time trying to cut down the body fat. So that's really, really good stuff. That's something I'd look into. And yeah, with dietaries from Monday to Friday, in a whole week schedule, it's such a good, like, it's disciplining your mind. That's the biggest thing. And so it's great. It's great getting that experience. And even for our audiences, man, something to think about, for especially when you still got the time of 2024. So with you training in Uriah Faber's gym, and somebody I widely respect, Uriah Faber, great fighter. Many colleagues of mine have been big fans of him. When you started, discovering, MMA, was there ever somebody you kind of idolized that you looked at and said, you know what? I love his style. I love his professionalism, but I like the way he kind of carries himself. Was there ever somebody you idolized in the MMA that you say, you know what? I could shape my fighting style and ability almost similar to his. Was there ever someone that you had in mind?
For sure. For me, that was George St. Pierre. He was my all-time favorite fighter growing up. And I feel like he really embodied what a martial artist is and should be. He was a professional in the cage, outside of the cage, very well-rounded, smart fighter, and really built a team around him that was able to give him good game plans going into the fights and prepare the absolute best way possible. And I just kind of try to live like a martial artist, not just go in there and fight for 15 minutes and then take this big old hiatus from the room. I like to get right back in there as soon as possible, and just lived a very disciplined life. And when I think of the word discipline, I think of GSP. So he was my idol growing up, and it's someone that I try to really emulate through my training and just how I carry myself as a fighter.
Man, I absolutely loved watching GSP, man. I mean, good God. I mean, that guy probably had the most muscular thighs that I was almost afraid to even have like a leg wrestle with, the guy was so built, but he was so fun to watch because, yes, I think it was a great guy to really kind of, keeping an eye on because he was great at grappling. He was also very strategic as he started to move around because he wanted to be in the best spot where I got you locked in, you're screwed. And I mean, he was the best of all of them. And so, so one last thing before letting you go. So, I mean, in the MMA world, because not a lot of people really do kind of know about it, but in your experiences and especially taking on this journey road, because like I said, I've told you from the last time that we talked, I'm pulling for you for getting into that big UFC card, and we are getting geared almost for UFC 300, man. It's going to be so stacked. But being in that journey, I mean, what were some of the benefits and maybe what are some of the sacrifices that you had to take? Because it's a hell of a life, man, being an MMA fighter. So what was kind of the experience behind it?
Oh, well, it's hell. But, embracing that and learning to love that. But I think it's just as hard mentally as it is physically. It takes a lot out of you, and especially in the early on stages of your career, you don't make that much money or anything like that, and you really have to sacrifice a lot. There's guys training to do this all around the world, coming from third world countries and such that this is like they'll move to here, wherever, to fulfill their dreams, and you see a lot of different work ethics in that room, and it really keeps you honest about how much you're putting into the sport. So I think that's another great thing about training out here is just the wide variety of styles you get and the people from all different walks of life, and it really gives you an honest look at what it takes. And if you're not putting in the work that you're supposed to, it will be exposed in the cage.
Man, there you go. I mean, life of an MMA fighter, man. It's a lot of hell, but hey, you make it successfully, and you grind and you train hard every single day, and you're gonna make it there. I mean, like I said, my favorite fighter that I've had for years that I loved watching was John Jones. I've said it all the time. I thought he was the greatest, in respect, greatest washed fighter because I loved him as a fighter. I thought he was just fantastic. That night that he almost got robbed in his championship belt night, took care of the robber that tried to mug him, and then goes into his title fight and wins that fight. I was like, I got respect for this dude. Like the fact to go in there and yet have a clear mind knowing this guy wasn't worth my time. My time is in that ring. And the second he won the title fight, it was bittersweet from the end of it. But it is a hell of a life, but you grind and you train hard and you fight hard. Many opportunities and many blessings are there ahead, man. And so I give you props for that, but appreciate you coming up onto the show. What's the deal, man? What could possibly happen, sometime soon? Is the next fight, and do you have a selection of an opponent, or are you just kind of waiting it out and seeing what kind of happens?
Well, I've got a big announcement coming up soon here that I'm going to be posting about. And then after that, I'm looking to fight hopefully in June, July, just get everything squared away. And like I said, after my fight, I just want to have an active year and keep the ball rolling. And I'm very much looking forward to being back in the cage and doing what I love.
Well, there you go. And that everybody, and even in my new location up in Denver, we're all pulling for you, man, especially Foothill alumni, man. We're all pulling for you. Absolutely excited for your next bout and next fight. And congratulations in winning in division in your last fight, man. Absolutely proud and cannot wait for the next one ahead. A fun question, I will say, because we're getting geared for UFC 300. Is there anybody in mind that you're hoping you might see fight that you know is like, that's the fight for the ages? Is there anybody you thought of in mind?
Well, I don't have that fight card right in front of me, but if I'm correct, I think that Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje fights on that card.
Oh man, I that's going to be a fun one right there. Holloway and Justin Gaethje, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've got my eyes on. Those guys always bring it, and I think that it's going to be damn near impossible for them to have a boring fight. So, and for both guys, it's a legacy fight. The stakes are high, and yeah, man, that's one I'm really looking forward to.
I will say the first time I ever became a UFC fan, the first ever fight I watched was UFC 100, and I thought my favorite fight of all was GSP's. I mean, the guy against Jose Aldo, I mean, my God, man, Thiago, I mean, it was great. It was a great night, and BJ Penn, I mean, it was a stacked card. I couldn't stand, the Brock Lesnar fight, but still, it was something. But, hopefully UFC 300, I mean, like you said, and both of us from Vegas, it's never going to be a dull night. You know what you're going to get at T-Mobile Arena. So my hope is it goes there. It's going to be a wild and packed night from there. But appreciate you coming on, man. Rest up well, and we will definitely see you on your next fight coming up soon, man. Take care of yourself.
For sure, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you got to think, man. It's a hell of a lot of training, like being an MMA fighter, and even for semi-pros. I mean, it's hard. You're working with, with what you got, and that's kind of the hard part. But eventually, when you start to get up to, the big contracts, the big time fights, I mean, it's an experience, man. Really, really is. And so my hope is, like I've said, I've always been pulling for this kid getting into a UFC card at some point. And, I'm really, really ecstatic for his next fight. I thought he was great. I thought he was absolutely just fantastic. Hard toe-to-toe fight, especially, for a decision. So brought a lot. So I'm excited for, the next fight coming up ahead. It's going to be great. It's going to be exciting, and cannot wait for more. So we're going to take a break here, but coming up next, Evan Renaerts is going to be joining us here for Two Guys in Hockey, because I have a lot that I need to disclose. Post-hockey trade deadline. Going to be exciting stuff. Cannot wait for it. So you guys do not want to miss it here up on the show. So I've been bragging about it for the last couple of days and weeks, and I'm never going to stop bragging about it, because March Madness, it starts on my birthday on March 19th. We've got NHL Stanley Cup playoffs around the corner, NBA playoffs. You want to get all of your betting needs. BetUS.com is the place to be. BetUS is the best place to be at, because all the madness, including, the madness we got in the NFL free agency, is the place where you get the best expertise in sports book analysis, from straight from straight bets, leg parlays, and so much more. BetUS has you covered up on it. It's why they've been the best for 30 years running, and it doesn't stop from there. Not interested in the sports book? That's okay, because we got horse racing as well. Place your bets up on your favorite horses, and if you want more entertainment, there's also the casino section as well on BetUS.com. When you sign up and put $50 or more in your deposit, you'll get 200% in bonuses with 30 risk-free bets as a way of saying thank you for choosing BetUS for all your betting needs. Go online to BetUS.com. BetUS, where the game begins.
up, sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
Key Williams at Dante Criswell Start 7200 Seconds podcast Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
All right, folks, remember, don't lose your seat with SeatGeek when you use promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off. Get your favorite seat of your favorite spot, whether it's your next sporting event, concert, live shows, so much more with SeatGeek.com. That's Snake Sports is the promo code for $20 off of your purchases. All right, so we're going to break this down, and then that's when we're going to have our guest up here. And I've got a lot to talk about from here, but post-NHL trade deadline, I am ecstatic. I am excited about this because I think this is fair. Now, for everybody and for my radio audiences, I apologize, but this top 10 was breaking down the traded players on each of those teams and going into potentially the playoffs because, again, we're getting geared up for the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it gets tougher. Lots of teams that we know that we kind of see a little bit of their true colors, it sometimes could come out different. So we are really geared up and excited for this one. So here we go, top 10. Let's go.
Rank them up.
Yeah, it's time. It's game
The
time.
top 10 NHL teams according to Jake.
Number 10.
Number 10. Number 10. Number
That right there, folks. All right, so let's start with number 10 from here. And so the number 10 team that I have listed is the Toronto Maple Leafs for a few reasons, because I do like their group and their core. Now, goaltending sometimes give me a little bit of a scare, but Joel Edmondson, defensively, I like it. They needed defensive depth. However, here's the reason Toronto is number 10. Because when was the last time Mitch Marner ever showed up in the playoffs? Okay, Mitch Marner could be a really, really good regular season forward, but in the playoffs, he shrinks. And for many people, and for the people up in the back, Austin Matthews is by far the best young forward that is right now in his prime. So for those of you who thought Patrick Laine was a better pick, you are probably kicking yourselves in the back right now, because Austin Matthews, I know what I'm getting from a lethal scorer, but respectfully, because of how stacked the Eastern Conference can be, I'm going to respectfully put him at number 10.
Number 9.
Number 9 team was interesting for me because the New York Rangers, for a few reasons, I like their offense. Defensively, still kind of gives me a little bit of questions. But, however, I like Igor Shesterkin. I think situationally as a goaltender, he does show up in big spots. Now, Jacob Trouba, their captain, could definitely be a lethal shooter, but also brings you real good defense. Now, they got Alex Wenberg from Seattle to give them a little bit more boost up on offense, because, again, you want to be going into the Stanley Cup playoffs with an insurance package, because if either of these guys get hurt, what's your next plan? Who's going to be your next guy stepping up? So I think the Rangers, they did a good thing. Now, again, they could go into this thing, and depending on who they're facing in the first round could dictate that. But I got to say, Peter Laviolette, he fooled me, man. I didn't think the Rangers were going to be this good. I thought they were going to take a step back. But Peter Laviolette, I underestimated him. Because, again, I thought Gerard Gallant, as a aggressive offensive coach, he was going to be great with all this. But change of scenery, but I think it worked out for the best. But here's the number 8 team that I think most of you might not see coming.
Number 8.
So number 8 is the Dallas Stars. And for a few reasons, because what Pete DeBoer does so good is he is great defensively. I told people when Vegas fired him, he's going to have a job next week. Okay? He just has that kind of defensive mentality. And when you look at Miro Heiskanen and now with Chris Tanev, perfect defenseman when it comes to blocked shots. He already had 171 blocked shots with Calgary before he joined the Dallas Stars. So Dallas is all about defense. Their big thing is they may not look great on paper with offense, but if you shut down some of the really good opposing offenses, that becomes a problem, because if you cannot score off of this really good Dallas defense with Jake Ottinger as the net minder, you're in big trouble. And that's where Dallas is really going to beat you in some areas. But I think the next opponent may go toe-to-toe with them.
Number 7.
7 to me that I think really can go to toe-to-toe with the Dallas Stars is the Vancouver Canucks. But here's the thing that scares me about it. So people that did not get the news, Thatcher Demko suffered an injury that is scaring Vancouver fans right now. And I like Thatcher Demko. But as far as playoff goaltending, he kind of gives me a little bit of some questions here. But I love the Elias Lindholm trade for many reasons, because he provides you pure passing, he provides you some pure offense, and especially a team that really upgraded with speed. This is a pretty fast team, and they could score off of you on any given night. But I fear, the reason I put him at 7 is because I fear going into the playoffs, just like we learned with Boston and just like we learned with Tampa, when you're the top team in the Western Conference and you're the big and bad team and you shrink in the playoffs, people start clowning on you. And that's the thing I fear about Vancouver for respective reasons. but I do think this is a good quality team, and they could go toe-to-toe with a Dallas. So here's number 6. Number 6 team that I thought people kind of scratch their heads on, but I'm very, very clear on them, is the Carolina Hurricanes. My reason for this is they absolutely fleeced the hell out of Kyle Dubas and Pittsburgh getting Jake Gensel, because to get that many players and you don't get a first-round pick? What are you doing, Kyle? I mean, you're talking about future here. I was almost sold on Pittsburgh being the best team going into next year. But Carolina, here's the things I like about them. I love their passing abilities. They're great at that. But they also now have a fully loaded offense. Here's the other thing of why they're number 6. Frederick Anderson, he's coming back from the injury. And so you're going to have your netminder back at the best time, because it's better late than never. But Carolina, I feel like this could be a second-round team, because I'm not going to put them in the Eastern Conference just yet, because I want to see how balanced that they can be going into the playoffs. But I'm excited for Jake Gensel. Also, they end up acquiring playoff experience with Evgeny Kuznetsov, which I think is huge, because he needed a change of scenery. Once he got dropped down to Hershey, I thought this was a laughingstock. But he's got a new home. He seems to be happy. And so now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the 5 teams here.
Number 5.
The 5th team that I have here is the Winnipeg Jets. And for a few reasons on this, I love their offense now getting Tyler Toffoli. But here's the other thing that they also got too. They got Sean Monahan ahead of time, because you need somebody that's going to spread the puck around. And somebody too that's going to crash in like Tyler Toffoli in open areas is very lethal. And I think, honestly, this was the hole that they filled by the time Patrick Laine got traded to Columbus, and they found it with Tyler Toffoli. But I love Mark Scheifele in the playoffs. I especially love the hell out of Connor Hellebuck in the playoffs, because you're getting an elite goaltender. Outside of Andrei Vasilevsky, I'm very sure of Connor Hellebuck, but hopefully it seems to me that Rick Bowness and the Winnipeg Jets are putting their chips in, so I like them there at number 5.
Number 4.
Number 4 to me that I think really got good at veteran experience is the Boston Bruins. Now, they did upgrade their defense getting Andrew Peeke, which I thought was a very underrated trade for me for a few reasons, because Boston, they created more defensive depth with Charlie McAvoy and also with a couple of other really good pieces. But this is the offensive hurrah that is probably going to be the last string with them, because who knows what's going to happen with Brad Marchand, but you are getting the best of him. And also, you're still getting the best out of David Pastrnak. So offensively, I still think this team does really good. It was kind of weird for me that I felt like they were because when they announced that they were going to trade Linus Ullmark, that was weird. But didn't happen. I'm glad it didn't happen. But Jeremy Swayman, I mean, you've got to have a goalie tandem. So I think this team at number 4, they could give you some fits in the Eastern Conference.
Number 3.
At number 3, that really wants to get back into the cup is the Colorado Avalanche. For a few reasons on this is because I like the pickups that they got. Because I honestly do think that even in defense, they picked up a really good defenseman. They also ended up picking up Casey Middlestat from Buffalo, who I thought very underrated player. Buffalo's got to be hating themselves right now, because this was supposed to be a playoff team, and then they crashed and burned. But Casey Middlestat, I like with what they're getting. Now, it hurts because they are getting rid of a young defenseman, Bowen Byram. But that's okay. I think Buffalo will be interesting next year with a core 4 defense, because you are not going to get past that. But Sean Walker from Philadelphia, that's a pretty solid pickup for defense. And at least it fills in the hole. But thank God you got rid of the Ryan Johansson contract. And the second the Flyers had him, they were like, nope, we're not taking that on. You're going to be put up on waivers. So Ryan Johansson didn't find himself since, it's Columbus days. But I like it. I think the Avalanche are definitely back in the Stanley Cup bubble. But here's number 2, who I think is going to cause some fits.
Number 2.
Me that really ended up stacking up on offense is the Florida Panthers. Now, what were the problems last season when they got to the Cup and they didn't win the Cup? there was some offensive depth that they did not fully address until now. Vladimir Tarasenko and Kyle Okposo, damn, that's a really good offense. And when you've got Alexander Barkov from there and Matthew Tkachuk, that offense is going to be relentless. And you've got another really solid year out of Sergei Bobrovsky. Expect Florida to make the biggest noise in the Eastern Conference because I think they want to get back into the Stanley Cup so badly. And now here's where people are going to be really thrown off at number one.
Number one.
One team for me. Don't call me a homer. I do not care what people think about this, but I thought the Vegas Golden Knights definitely deserve number one for this one because you got Noah Hannafin and Tomas Hertl for cheap, and you still have a first-round pick this year. This is arguably one of the best front offices in the NHL. They are not the spoiled children for many people that keep thinking that they are, but I think they did a very, very good job getting quality players. They got quality depth. Now, as far as, Anthony Mantha goes, he needed a change of scenery, but at least I'm getting a solid 25 goals a year type player and somebody with a little bit of some experience to kind of spread the puck around. But I think in what they were talking about from negotiations, Noah Hannafin looks like he may sign a 7-year deal with this team. Now, there's going to be some sacrifices, but I think their deal is they're about first-round picks, and they're about trading first-round picks. It's a rinse-and-repeat type of thing, but this is why that they are the most lethal front office that you got in the National Hockey League, and they should be respected. So there you go. My top 10 right from there. And so joining me to really discuss about my top 10 is the good man himself, Evan Renaerts of Two Guys and Hockey, joining us for some hockey talk. I'm not crazy for thinking it like this, right, Evan? I mean, good Lord, we've had this was a crazy trade deadline for 3 days. And, it all started when you get a few pieces moved up from Vancouver and Winnipeg, and then everybody started coming out of the woodwork. So what was your thoughts on the trade deadline, man? Because I thought it was nuts for 3 days.
Well, first of all, man, hey, thanks for letting me jump on with you here tonight. As you can see, I'm sporting a Vegas shirt here tonight, man. I'm going to say right now, to top off the show, 5 rock stars for your top 10. Don't agree with them all, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But as much as I don't agree that Vegas is number one, I'm going to tell you, man, they had the best trade deadline. And as much as they've been faltering and playing 500 hockey, they are setting themselves up for a good run, even if they don't have Martinez and Stone come back for the run. So, but yeah, by the way, I thought we had the best intro in hockey at Two Guys in Hockey Talk. Man, you rock a Vegas show. So if you're watching, guys, you guys got to make sure you come back, click on, because this seems to be the place to be here, man, tonight.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, the Stanley Cup playoffs right around the corner. Hockey playoffs is like the best atmosphere that you could get amongst any other playoffs outside of the NFL. I mean, so, and now living up in Denver, man, I'm in Colorado territory, so I know they're going to hate me for this one, but let's start with the Toronto Maple Leafs, because I'm sure you know of John Viveros over at Hot Take Hockey, man. He is pissed with Trevelyan because it took this long for him to really get going with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, I'm not crazy for saying that this could be a number 10 team, because Edmonton, I love the Adam Henrique move, but the only thing that scares me is their goaltending and their efficiency at defense. I'm not crazy for saying that, but I think for Toronto, like, am I gonna at the very least get another celebration up out of them? I mean, what are your thoughts with them?
Okay, so first up, just going back, so everyone realizes that you got Austin Matthews. Now, we were just talking about him when you were bringing in that information there on him. I want you guys to look at him in his playoff. So in his games, he's got 0.88 points per game in the playoffs, but he's a 1.14. He is a regular season boy, even Austin Matthews. However, what is different is in 50 games, he does have 22 goals. So you're looking at a guy who's going to score, let's just say, a goal a game. His first 2 seasons in the playoffs weren't as much. So Austin Matthews is a little bit of a no-show to me, man. Marner, I have a feeling this might be the year. Marner has something on his back. I know a little bit behind the scenes because I know a few people who know him. He wants to prove people wrong. In fact, actually, a former guest a couple seasons ago, Cassidy Silva, who unfortunately she got injured. She was playing in Finland, probably one of the best goaltenders in goals against and save percentage you're going to find. She plays against him, and she just says, this guy is incredible. Here's the problem. They have not built a team to protect him. They want him to be out there playmaking, and they haven't built a team to protect the playmaker like Marner. So, yeah, he's setting stuff up, but when it comes to playoffs, you got no room to stick handle out there, as, of course, Edmonton has seen over the years. So I'm with you. I don't even have Edmonton in my top 10. Edmonton. I don't have Toronto in the top 10 at all. I just don't think they got it. Their goaltending just is like, let's just say they're going to have to go with Wool if they're going to actually even have a chance. And he's going to have to play above his head these playoffs. So, and on the back end, you cannot keep relying. And Joel Edmondson, sorry, folks. I had concerns about him from the beginning. The guy is too slow. He'll play zone defense, but the problem is he gives up too much gap crossing that line.
Yeah, no, and he really does. And that's why that I'm like, Toronto, I think, what was it? Only 2 moves that they made. I was just like, that's not good enough, especially when you're trying to build depth for the playoffs. And so I'm with you on that one. And again, hopefully, because again, I don't bash on players when they have contract extensions. Right. I'm critical of them because if I'm paying you this much, you better show up in the playoffs too. I mean, it's the same way I felt about Max Pacioretty since he's been with the Vegas Golden Knights. They should have got rid of him 2 years ago. And so I'm like, oh my God, but.
So, hey, say something should be interesting about Trey Living. What's different from when he was in Arizona or when he went over to Calgary and took the lead? Really, this is Trey Living. This is the kind of team he builds. And that's just the way he is. That's the way he does business. So he has not really built the team. He's just been trying to kind of navigate. I'm actually shocked that they kept Sheldon Keefe in. I thought he'd be gone. Let's not look at contracts anymore. They're dropping coaching contracts. They don't care. They did it with Sutter. They did like Woodcroft right now, the best guy on the market. So expect him to go to Pittsburgh this offseason. If not, he's going to Ottawa.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one because, again, next season, man, the offseason is going to be absolutely insanity. But let's go through it at least with these top 10. So after Toronto, I've got the Rangers. Now, again, Peter Laviolette proved me wrong because I thought after Gerard Gallant left, this was not going to be an offensively aggressive team. He proved me wrong because I love Mika Zibanejad, I love Chris Kreider, and I love a lot of their top liners. So they go and get Alex Wenberg, and I honestly think this is really good depth for offense. But do you think Peter Laviolette has at least what he's got in him with his schemes that this team could get past the first round?
So I'm actually looking at this as a good trade deadline. I consider them the number 2 winner after Vegas, actually. Getting Wenberg was a good depth move. I know some Ranger fans are all worried. They're concerned that Zibanejad should be that second line center and it shouldn't be Wenberg. Wenberg was second line in Seattle. He's not going to be that. He is going to fill that depth role and he's going to likely be working a lot with Capo. I like his veteran experience. I like what he brings. And the boys, Lafreniere and Capo, are playing better. Lafreniere is playing now like that second line winger that everyone was expecting him to play. But what surprised me is seeing him play on the right wing. He's actually been very good playing on that right side, yet he was naturally a left wing coming up. But the reason that I have him so much higher than you do is because of Shersticking. And that's as my buddy and co-host Pavel says, I like to rub him and rub the Ranger fans. I call him Sherstinking. But I'll tell you, he does not stink when it comes to having a good save percentage, except for this year. That's my only falter that I'm worried about their goaltending this year. But I think that Quick can bail them out. He's been there. He's done it. And he's having a really good year.
Yeah, and honestly, it's good to have a mentor there. I mean, Vegas knew that. I mean, the fact that they had like a dual tandem, but having Jonathan Quick there, it's important to have at least a veteran experience there because it's a good mentor. It gets you out of your head, get you clear, get you focused. I mean, that's the most important thing. And I love Shesterkin. I do think that since the change from Henrik Lundqvist to Igor Shesterkin, I mean, Rangers were going to be in good hands. They were going to be in good hands, but it was a matter of time until he finally found his groove. So Dallas, I mean, I was going to rank Dallas a little slightly higher, but after the trade deadline, kind of had my thought of why they're at number 8. Now, I love their defensive core, and picking up Chris Tanev was a great move because I could trust Miro Heiskanen can shoot from the back end, but if I'm needing a defender to block shots, what is Pete DeBoer's identity? Defensive. I mean, like we look at the NFL, in the NFL head coaching, if you get a defensive coach, their tendency is to get defensive. So in Pete DeBoer's mind, because he is a defensive guy, this is something that the Dallas Stars, they could easily give fits to other Western Conference teams. What was your thoughts on the Dallas Stars? Because I still do think there's still not a lot of offense outside of, Jason Robertson and a couple players.
Okay, this is interesting. So my co-host Pavel over at Two Guys in Hockey Talk, he actually had them right up there for the final this year, I believe. He's been a believer of them, and as much as I'd like to just run him through the ringer on this kind of stuff, I think he was right. I have not wanted to admit it. Dallas has come through. I actually think when they made that Tanev move, that was what they needed. They have a shot blocker in Tanev. Hakanpää is a great defensive guy. You have your right side on both of those guys. That's the only piece. But when you got Heiskanen and you got Lindell, of course, you got Ryan Suter. He's going to give you that depth down lower. And Thomas Harley has been a total surprise and an elite level contract player for them. So I think that they got a depth. My concern is if two players get hurt. If they have one, maybe. If they have two, but then, Sagan, he's there. He's expensive. Ben's playing the third line. What's interesting is he's playing with Logan Stankoven, who was the number 1 scorer in the AHL with their farm team. And by the way, no one recognizes this, but they got Maverick Bourque, who's now the next highest player, also on their farm team. That likely, depending on what happens in the playoffs, they have another guy to bring up. And so if you think about it, outside of Robertson, you got Hintz. Hintz is a good playoff guy. Pavelski, he always comes through. Matt Duchene, you got the wily veteran. Wyatt Johnston, I mean, what a pickup. And Sam Steele, great adept to throw down on your fourth line. So for me, I actually see this as a really good move. And I hate to admit it, and don't tell Pavel, but he might be right this year, and they could be cup bound.
I mean, I could tell you, when I watched that Western Conference championship between them and Vegas, I've said it before. I said, Dallas is going to be back next year. And they were going to be back in a big way because there's unfinished business that's involved from here. Vancouver, I want to think they're a really good team. I really, really do. I love their speed. I love their offense. I've also loved Quinn Hughes, their captain, bringing a defensive mind. But what scares me, and yes, we've got the news, Thatcher Demko is hurt. And I've said to people, the last thing you want is an important piece, especially your goaltender, getting hurt, because when teams figure that out, they're going to crush it. And it normally does happen this way because we've seen it with a bunch of teams over the years. Are you still kind of sold a little bit on Vancouver? What's your opinion on that? Because me, I'm like, I hate to say it, but I think they might be fool's gold going in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think this Vancouver situation, I think they got the right team. I think they have all the right mixes. Lindholm has not turned out like they thought. But what I'm concerned about is they don't have playoff experience. And I know there's a lot of folks out there that are going to say that's hogwash. They'll call bullshit on it. But I don't agree. Oh, sorry. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear on the show.
No, you're good.
I don't. We're in Vegas, dude. But what I would say is I think the difference is going to be Hughes. And believe this, Hughes and Pedersen. That's going to be the difference.
Yep.
Do they have space to do what they want to do? Will Hughes show like McCarr did a couple years ago when he came out and when they won the cup? That is the biggest, but I just don't see them being a team that is made for the playoffs when there's a lot more clutching and grabbing going on. And so frankly, I have them. Where do I have them listed in my Gee, man, I'm looking at number 9. I have them at 9. I'm just looking at my list. I made my list on the air while you were doing it here. So I'm saying, yeah, 9. And I only give them 9 because they had such a great start. But now they're back to 600, 650 hockey. So they're playing normal. And as the games get tighter, I think we're going to see as the season goes on, what's really going to come out of that.
I mean, it's a different atmosphere. I mean, when I went on JT the Brick show, and shout out to him, man, because he put there on his show intro, my voice recording, when I said January, February, March, if you're not prepared and you don't know what your identity is, you're going to get smoked, because I put Vegas on that back burner. And it's true. You could be one team from October to December, but when January, March comes around, you better find that identity. And so, and look, it's been 13 years in the making. First of all, for those that think that, that's gibberish, Vancouver hadn't even had the big team since 2011, since Roberto Luongo or Ali Pizza. I mean, come on now. What are we talking about? But number 6, what's interesting about this is, Carolina, they did fleece the hell out of Pittsburgh. And you think Toronto right now is like literally mad with Treleving, and they were all like, oh, this is Kyle Dubas's fault. Kyle Dubas is doing the same thing in Pittsburgh. So I'm like, they get fleeced with the Jake Gensel trade, but I think this is solid. But let me be honest with you, because we have seen Rod Brindamore several times in the Eastern Conference, and they never get over the hump. Do I feel like Carolina, to some degree, do they have it, or do they fall short again?
Wow. I just was going over this yesterday, getting ready for our show this week. And so just a little disclaimer, I'm going to be touching in on this. I actually see them in the final this year in the East. I think they're so much better. Getzel has now been activated. I'm not sure if it happened today or yesterday. Interesting enough. I mean, let's go through their depth, especially up front. Sebastian Aho. They got Svechnikov going. They got Teravainen, Kotkaniemi. They got Getzel. Kuznetsov will be good when he's in a depth role, not playing that top line. They got Nekas. They got Jordan Stahl is going to be great on that third line. Jesper Fat, Martin Hook, and Seth Jarvis. And that leaves like one guy, maybe like Jack Drury. I mean, you are in good shape up front. I think they're the deepest. Brendan Lemieux, like you mentioned, Stefan Noesen. So, I mean, they're doing well. What I'm a little worried about, and this is where I always say they're more suspect, I'm not as strong on guys like Slavin as everybody else when it comes to playoffs. I think that they're a great midseason team. I think they're good to start and they're good in the mid, but I'm a little concerned what they're going to be like in the playoffs. But long as goaltending, that's the only thing for me. Will their goaltending hang in? That's going to be the concern right now. What do you think is going to happen? Because I don't think, man, their goaltending is going to let them win the final, but I think it can get them at least to the conference final.
Yeah, I mean, that's good positive hopes for everybody out there in Raleigh, because I mean, again, they're coming off of Peter Mrazek, and then you have Antti Ranta, and then now having Frederick Anderson. And him being back is very crucial. But what's the best version of Anderson we're going to get? It's going to be left to be said from there.
So I have to say, for all my Carolina fans, I got about 20 or 30 out there. That was for you guys. I gave you a little shout out.
So here's the thing. So I think this is interesting, but I've always had the best respects for Winnipeg, but this is a completely different group now. Tyler Toffoli and Sean Monahan. So the two of them, now they haven't had a lot of games together like, Toffoli had with Alex Iafallo, but they were clearly clicking, in their Calgary days. Now they're in, and even in, Montreal. But Tyler Toffoli, to me, feels like the missing link that they finally found after Patrick Laine. And I feel like because you're not going to rely heavily so much on Mark Scheifele, even though I love him as a lethal shooter, but you're going to need somebody that's an ace in the hole at some point. Does Winnipeg maybe make a little bit of noise in the Western Conference? I feel like they do because you got to do this right for Connor Hellebuyck, man. He's my favorite goaltender right now in the league.
Wow. You got to admit, I mean, give it off. Did we not start the season? I just was going back trying to pull up some clips and stuff as we're getting closer now after trade deadline, seeing what we've talked about on our show. And the one thing that I recognized is that we were all talking about Winnipeg being done because of the Scheifele and Hellebuyck and what was going on there. And I mean, to see what Cheveldayoff has done and moved this team around. Mark Chipman has money. That's not an issue. Stop worrying about the fans. Bettman timed it bad, but it was preset. He didn't just show up, all the fans and their conspiracies in Canada. He's not moving your team out. They just are trying to push, and the narrative just turned out to not be good because Bettman, man, he just is not good at dealing with media. That's my
here. Yeah.
But Monahan, I thought the Monahan deal for me, what they gave up was a good piece for a good solid run, and they got to do it now. They got to show Hellebuyck. They got to show Scheifele. They got to do something for these guys. Nick Ehlers, man, you got Kyle Connor. And their defense. I just heard another talk show this morning talking about them, and interesting enough, they called their defense a bunch of pricks. That's what they called them. In other words, if they truly are a bunch of pricks, then this season, this playoffs, that might just be what the doctors ordered for that team.
I love it. I love it, man, because, and here's the other thing. I mean, a change, a change in direction because you're moving on from Paul Maurice and you got Rick Bowness, who I thought, I didn't think Bowness did a bad job, but I just didn't think that was the group last year. Now I feel like, okay, this may look like the group. So let's see what Rick Bowness has on the back of it, the back of his pocket. But I had Boston at number 4. And the reason of it is because, I mean, Montgomery, man, I didn't think Boston to this point was going to literally play as great by the time he arrived. And I mean, again, I loved him as a regular season team, but then they turned into foosball last year. But I think they learned their lesson respectfully. You get Pat Maroon, you get Andrew Peak, you get some guys that are at least depth worthy. So does it kind of feel like that, Boston, they learned their lesson and they're going to get themselves back on the right page?
I do see. It'd be very interesting if we get a Toronto-Boston first round. I see them getting out of the first, but I don't see the second round. I just think that loss of losing Krejci and Bergeron is going to affect them. They've done well. I think they needed to do something at this trade deadline to solidify something. I'm worried about that forward depth. They looked exposed in games I've been watching over the last 3 weeks. They've had some good games, but they've also let a lot in. And I think this trade rumor that went around and this whole piece where potentially LA was looking for Omar, you got to wonder, how's that going to mess with the psyche of your goaltending? Yeah, Swayman's great, but then what if he comes out? Is Omar going to be ready? Like, how's he going to feel with that? I don't know. I think that it was a bad deal. They shouldn't have even tried to press it. I think it will affect their playoffs, but I think that they can easily get through the first round.
Yeah, man, because honestly, I mean, Omar, he saw the narrative. The second you end up seeing it, you better be nice to him because, players see everything. They see everything. And so they figure that out. That affects your playoff hopes. Okay, so I live now here in Newly, Denver, Colorado. So me and my wife officially moved here from Vegas. Love my roots. Woo! But I've been to Ball Arena. I was at a game against the Chicago Blackhawks because I thought I was going to get an SC top 10 from Connor Bedard, but he failed me. But the thing about Colorado is Colorado wants to get back into the cup. You could see how many of those moves they made. Sean Walker, really good underrated defenseman. I think Casey Middlestad is going to be a serious problem going into the playoffs, man. How do you kind of, rank this? Because again, if Gabriel Landeskog comes back in the playoffs, I'm not giving my hopes up because of injury reasons. That's very tough, especially in a lower body injury. But how do you see the Avalanche moving forward in the West?
Yeah, I got him ranked number 2 is where I got him placed. The only reason I don't have him number 1, I think the Sean Walker deal, Bowen Byron is, the move was great. It worked out well. Talk about loading up in Buffalo. Middlestat was what they needed. Like, I am shocked that they got that deal done, and they're setting themselves up really well. But Bowen was not going to be that shot blocker. He wasn't going to play that tough hockey. I will give this. I'm not a big Walker fan for a high price, but I think I get where they're at and I get what they need. And I think he's the right mix. It's chemistry. We see that on when you're talking about World Cup, Canada Cup, Olympics, when you see teams, it's that mix. It's not always the best players. And Walker's really good. He doesn't give up a lot of gap space. And he's pretty good at not letting those guys get by at that blue line, as opposed to someone like Kurt Russell back in the day. Great. He was great at shot blocking and had high number. It's because he let him get into his D zone too often. But Middlestat coming in, I'm with you. Landeskog, I do think that Landeskog coming back will be a good depth, but I think you almost have to resign yourself to third line unless he's showing that he's got that extra edge. But I'd be worried about re-injury. I'd be worried about some of the other pieces to it. But this is where I'm going to throw a wild card in for the playoffs. Look out for Drouin during the playoffs. That would be my wild card for them. That guy has all the skill and talent. The only part that has not connected is up here. We started this season, last season with Willie Palov out in the East Coast, and he talked about it. I watched Drouin. Drouin, just for those that don't know, actually played with McKinnon. I used to follow them when they were 13, 14 years old, which my co-host will tell me that's creepy. Following too many of these young guys. Just last year, right? I'm at the Brick Invitational Tournament in West Edmonton Mall, and I'm watching all these 9, 10-year-olds, and they're like, "What you doing?" I'm watching all these 9, 10-year-old boys playing out on the ice. But I will say, years ago, I actually got to see Jack Hughes and Cole Caulfield actually play in the Brick Invitational Tournament. I wrote them in my iPhone just as a little side note, and I said, these guys are going to be something. And I'll tell you, Drouin and McKinnon, they got chemistry. And that's the piece. The only thing that I'm worried, Jake, is Georgiev. Will Georgiev be able to actually stand on his head these playoffs? If he can do it, I think they have a chance to get out and be in the final and take out Dallas.
Yes, thank God. Somebody is on the same page, because I've been hearing it all over Denver. Okay, they all have been saying the same thing about the consistency from Alexander Georgiev. I'm the same way, because again, this is why I had him at 3, because I love the roster. Again, they lost pieces with Andre Burakovsky and Nazem Kadri, but at least Middlestad kind of fills in a little bit of that Burakovsky thing. I'm not sure of the Kadri, but he fills that in. But yeah, Georgiev, you've got to stand on your head. If you don't make the consistent stops, because again, I've said this, round 2, Vegas, Colorado, again. And I feel like Vegas would end up winning that in 7, because again, it's a consistency. So Florida, number 2. I think Florida found what they were missing from last season, because again, I think last year they did focus up on defense. Now, again, they lose Radko Gudas, who I didn't think was really a big pivotal player, only for a certain time, but you saw him shrink in the final. But they got Vladimir Tarasenko, a real good depth offenseman, and they've got Kyle Okposo. This was really interesting for me, because I'm like, wow, Buffalo's captain, that just told you Buffalo, they are focused up on young cores. They keep selling me like they're going to make the playoffs. But Okposo, how big does that got to mean now for Florida on their offense? Because they finally, I feel like they found the missing piece, and they want to get back into the cup as well.
Wow. You imagine, just think of that lineup. You got Barkov, Kachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Verhage, you got Rodriguez, a nice, good third line guy coming in. Okposo, who's going to be able to play in that bottom six back. You got Nick Cousins, who's just a total idiot out in the ice, but you know what? He disturbs them out there. And then you think on the back end, they're not sexy at all, but somehow they get the job done. And their goaltending, I don't know why people were talking about trading the contract over a year and a half ago. They couldn't get rid of Bobrovsky. Now everyone loves him. And Stoller he was a third during the pandemic. Stoller was the actual guy that kept getting passed around by everybody during that period, including him and Forsberg, right? Go figure what's going on there. These guys, and they're already been playing playoff hockey, I believe, probably about 60% of the season already.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Florida, like I said, it was only a matter of time. I said to people, I'm like, look, usually first year on those contracts for goaltenders is not always sexy. But by the time that you're in year 3, year 4 in that contract, you are getting what you pay for. So, again, I don't think it's fool's gold with Bob, but, there's parts of it that is long. Same thing I say about Georgiev. As long as you're consistent and you make the important stops, you have a chance to make it there as a finals team. Now, this is why I have Vegas as number 1. No, not as speaking as a homer, but here's the reason, is because you got Hanifin and Tomas Hertl for cheap, and you still have a first-round pick. It feels like this organization, for the last few years, they love to trade away their first-round picks to go and get quality players for a right price deal. So, again, I thought the one that really that irks me still, is the Nick Suzuki trade. Because you're going to tell me you're going to sell yourself on Max Pacioretty while we have a young kid with Cole Caulfield that's going to be a problem for the next few years. I thought it was outrageous. But outside of a lot of them, I think they've made the smoothest moves. Now, Mantha, he needed a change of scenery, because even when I talked to Dan Holme of Locked On Capitals, he said this guy has not found his groove. But luckily, 56 games, 20 goals, so you're getting something out of him. But maybe Vegas's juice is just what he needs. And when Hertl comes back, I think you're going to get a really good playoff caliber player, because being next to, Joe Pavelski and them and that team, he was really lethal. But then the other thing, if you're shutting Stone down for now to save him in the playoffs, that is a cup team that knows what they're doing, because Bruce Cassidy knows how to, function with his young guys. But as we start to move on, this team, it's different when you look at the regular season than when you look at them in the playoffs. I feel like by that point, they're going to be ready to roll. What's your thoughts on Vegas?
Whoa. That's a great take. Can I just say this? If Stone makes it back, let's just say not the first game, I have a sneaky suspicion if he was even healthy on the first game or close to it, he won't be back, because there's going to be too many people going off on conspiracy. So it's not going to be till at least the third game minimum that he would come back. If I actually think this is much more serious, I think we'll be lucky to have him back for a second round. That's going to be the thing, though. If he's not back, that changes the complexion of this team. For a team that started great coming out of the blocks. And Martinez not being back there will also. But again, maybe he makes it back in there. I just like to say a couple things, first of all. So there is people with conspiracy all over around this LTIR thing and with what they can do. They're playing within the rules. They're playing within the rules. Very important. Now, everyone's like, well, but when they get the playoffs, the guy just happens to come in. Kucherov, it started with. It already happened. Stone coming back on that day, it felt off, but guess what? They still have to have doctors that are NHL guys that actually have to say that they came back. It's like that Bettman doesn't want a team to win in Canada. Hogwash. There's 7 teams now out of 32, maybe 34 within the next 3 years. Let's face it, the percentages are low. The cap issue is more. People want to be where it's warmer, less taxes. There's a whole bunch of issues around that. So with the LTIR piece, if you want to change it, by the way, NHL, what you do is you make cap compliant in the playoffs, but you can sit someone and still be cap compliant. So you can make a decision. So if Stone came back, someone's got to sit with more cap. Just make it that way. And I think the next collective bargaining, that will come into play. However, you don't want to be without Stone. You don't want to be without Martinez. It just so happened. Now, why do other teams give them good players and give them these good? Why did Calgary give Hanifin when they could have got so much more? But why did they give Tanev when they could have got so much more out of Dallas? Who knows, man? We don't get it. But some reason, Brad McCrimmon, and I got two people. So we had Leah Hextall, the first full-time play-by-play for ESPN and Bally Sports, play-by-play announcer, shared with us a couple seasons ago on Two Guys in Hockey Talk. She said, right, she's out of Brandon. Actually, Ron Hextall is a cousin of hers. And so they're very much a hockey family. And she said, Brad McCrimmon, we know him from the Brandon Wheat Kings. I actually lived there years ago. And during that period of time, I'm telling you, that guy knows how to wheel and deal. He acts like it's a junior team, but it doesn't matter. He can act like any which way because it works. I'm sorry, I'm on a rant. I got to tell you that more guys look for the next guy to come in. Mark Hunter, who has been with the London Knights, he will be the next guy, and he will be like Brad McCrimmon. You're going to find the NHL realizing you got to be smart as a GM and work the system. It is what you got to do. And there's no choice if you really want to actually have a successful team. And you said Nick Cousins, right? They gave up Nick Cousins. Yeah. Giving up Cousins. Who cares? Suzuki. You talk about Pacioretty. Name me another NHL team who just throws away players that they overpaid for. They just lose them. They don't get enough back, and they still keep winning. And players that feel like they're stabbed in the back, and they keep getting more players. I'll tell you why. Because they win. Players want to go to a winner, and as long as they're winning, they'll be good. Pavel and I say this. Wait till the Vegas is not winning, and then you'll see a difference in the players that want to go or not. They just want to go to a winning team.
Now,
sorry, it's long-winded.
No, did you hear that for all the people in the back that are literally crying about all of this? I'm not the only one who feels like this because look, dude, I got sick and tired of hearing this crap where it's just like Vegas is using the LTIR again. Yeah, and so is 16 other teams that are smart enough that win more games. You want to be a better team, be a better team. Get a better front office, get a better coach, get better players. Like, enough of this crap. Like, they found a way to use it and use it the right way that's to their advantage. And that's easy. Like, I mean, you think it's that easy? Yeah. And this is the thing. They are a cap compliant it's a cap compliant league, much like look at the NFL. The NFL is king for this because they got the contracts, but they got the coach, they got the front office. If you're mad at somebody, just like I said early on the show, where Tiki Barber was yelling at Saquon Barkley, how about you go yell at Dave Gettleman and yell at Joe Shane and the Giants? They're the ones that are the problem, not Saquon. He doesn't care for your crap. Like, this is the kind of thing that I say for hockey fans because they want to feel like Vegas is the spoiled children that gets all these players. And I'm like, they're the ones who keep dumping them. So I'm like, are we really spoiled? But we find a way to make it happen. So, all right. It's crazy. That's my top 10. Now I'm curious to hear about yours, man. Let's have it because I am very curious about it.
Okay. So I'll just break it down. So number 10, I got Boston. I don't think they're going to repeat as far as the season, right? We already know that. But what I don't think they're going to repeat is that early round exit, because they're not facing Florida, right? So they're going to be good there. I see Vancouver in at number 9. Now, Vancouver is because they're not playoff ready. They're not a tough enough team. They're not built for the playoffs. When it comes to number 8, I got Winnipeg, and I'm telling you, it's the same reason. I am worried about them, and that's why I'm worried about that first round. Could they get taken out? Who are they going up against? Now, what if they're up against someone like Colorado? What if you get that saw off, right? Or Dallas, it's going to be a tough road moving in. Next up at 7, I got Carolina. I do think Carolina has a chance to be in that Final Four, but I'm worried about the goaltending. That's the only reason I put them lower. But I just got this feeling. I shouldn't have doubted them last year, and I did. And they showed how good of a team they are. Now, I got Edmonton at number 6. A little different than you. I think that, and by the way, Vegas, this will be the difference. I do not think Edmonton's ready for their cup. However, if Vegas and Edmonton meet in the first round, I think that's going to be the difference. If Vegas gets taken out by Edmonton, I think Edmonton is the only team that can take them out. That's my difference. And I think if they get by, they're going to get healthier. And I think that they're going to be a tough enough team and deep enough to take out any of the other guys. But Edmonton, I'm worried about the same as you. They don't got tough enough on their defense. And that's going to be a thing. You're not going to outscore in the playoffs. And by the way, they went deep up front, but running Troy Stetcher on the back end, they needed a top four. They needed to move CC down, not keep Desharnais up top. The New York Rangers, I have at 5. I think that they are positioning themselves. They got more depth. I think the coaching is very different. Gallant was a different kind of a coach than they got this year. And then at number 3, I got Florida. Now, I know I'm not going east and west back and forth, but I got Florida at 3. I do think that I am always a little concerned about that defense. Will they still be able to make that kind of run? And I am worried about how much playoff hockey they've been playing like. That's my concern with Vegas, why they've worn out a little bit, because they play playoff hockey all year long. Number 2, I got Colorado. So I got Colorado ranked at number 2, and only because of Georgiev. And then at number 1, I got the Dallas Stars. I think that this is their best chance. And again, Pavel's probably going to hear this, so he's going to run me ragged tomorrow night on our show. But that's what I just think that Dallas has got what it's going to take. But I do think I have them ranked that way, but I think the difference for Vegas, you might be dead on if they can get past Edmonton, if that's who they face in the first round.
Absolutely, man. And wow, it's a hell of a top 10. I like it, and again, I felt the same way initially about Dallas, but then when I started to see all these moves start happening and they start for certain particular teams, so hard for me to even put because I wanted to put them in the higher rank because I knew I love their defense and I love their experiences as well, because that's what's most important. So now we got both our top 10s. Here's an interesting question for you, because in post-trade deadline, there were a couple teams. Buffalo, I'm very excited about their core 4 defense. The other thing, New Jersey, they swap goaltenders and they go and get Kaapo Kähkönen. And, it felt like Vitek Vanacek was not the answer for them at the netminder, but they changed a few pieces. I felt a lot like I felt bad for New Jersey because I did think this was an interesting team moving forward, but then they looked like foosball later on. So who is your best, worst team that you're looking at with after the trade deadline that you're excited for next season?
Totally Buffalo. Buffalo. I mean, when you look at that back end, they long as Devin Levi can develop, unfortunately, they need a number 1 to go in there and work, take 65% of that load off of Buffalo with Devin Levi over there. But the back end, when you got Owen Power, you got Dahlin, you got Byron now. I mean, that's pretty good defense if you stop and you think about that. So with that, now I want you guys to catch this, okay? In their defense, when you have Dahlin, he is a left-hand D that can play right hand. You got Bowen Bryan, he can play both sides as well. Now, Jokiharju, he is a right side guy. Owen Power can play left or right. And then for your depth, you still got Cale Clegg. I mean, that's not bad to move forward. When I have Power and I have Jokiharju and I have Byron, and I have Rasmus Dahlin, I'm pretty excited about what I have there. And long as, now here's a key. Next year, I think a really big key isn't Zach Benson. I had Zach Benson, I think, rated on my Revs top 15 at number 4. I believe that was a steal for them. But Jack Quinn is a goal scorer. What will he come out like next year? But their team is good. I mean, think of it. How the age. Jeff Skinner is their old man at 31. Tage Thompson is still only 26 years old. Dylan Cousins coming in at 23, I think 23. I mean, if you walk through all your players, and we haven't even talked about Matthew Savoy, who's still developing, and if something can come out of him, I mean, you are looking at a heck of a team. And even right now, going into next season, when you're looking at the cap, I mean, the projected cap space for next year, they're probably going to have about $8.5 million with dealing with a few contracts. So that is my best worst team.
Yeah, I'm with you on the same boat with Buffalo, because in the end, I love, Alex Tuck, because again, as somebody that I watched him up in Vegas, the one quality I loved of Alex Tuck is he was the only person that was willing to crash into the net and force the puck into the net. Like he gets aggressive up on offense. And that's why I'm like, if you get that mentality and you start building around it, because Jeff Skinner, to be honest, I mean, the guy seemed like he was a high quality player when they first got him, but as he gets older, it changes a little bit. But I'm excited about Tage Thompson, and I do think that if they get a lethal scorer next to them to build more consistency, I think you are going to get potentially a wild card or a third place team in that division. I think it's very possible that you could. Now, let me ask you this, because two teams we've watched in the playoffs for several years, Pittsburgh and Washington. Washington did the right thing because they moved off Evgeny Kuznetsov. They moved off a couple of players. So which means to me they're rebuilding, but they're rebuilding it in the right way. Because, again, they can handle with the Ovechkin contract because he's going to retire a capital. But the question is surrounding with John Carlson. It's surrounding with a couple of other players, but they needed to get more younger juice and they needed to develop. They're doing the right thing. Whereas for Pittsburgh, you got no money. You got fleeced, not even for a first-round pick for Jake Gensel, and you've got your core three that you're not lasting for years, which is Sidney Crosby and Chris Letang and Geno Malkin. What are you doing? This is not the same Pittsburgh team who went back-to-back in 16-17. Things have changed. I've always said this, that since Fleury left, this has not been the same organization. So how did you feel about that? Because honestly, I'm on the side that I think Washington did a better job than what Pittsburgh did.
Well, okay. So first of all, before I continue, my co-host on Two Guys in Hockey Talk, Pavel, just made his comment there on YouTube saying that Evan is a Pittsburgh Penguin fan. I grew up on Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby. I followed him since he was 12. So I was another creeper of that young fella. And he talks about how I admit that that he was right about Dallas. I'm going to say that he was right about Pittsburgh. They're aging. I really thought that Carlson would not have the drop-off that he had. I thought you'd still be looking at a 75, 80-point player. I didn't think it was going to be – I thought they were going to make a wild card, and then you could go for it in the playoffs. But looking at this now, I think that this is a total mess. They got nothing back. Bunting is nothing. I'm sorry. If you're a Bunting fan, he's a great player. But I believe that they should have found a way to unload Riley right now. They knew they're not making a push. They're not getting into the wild card. And so I'm actually sitting here thinking, and I've been trying to look at this. What do you do if you're Kyle Dubas? Because you came in, they wanted to do something. They want to make money. You got these three best friends in Letang and Malkin and Crosby who wanted to retire together. Not going to happen now. I can't see it happening. Someone's going to go early. They're not going to retire and go off into the sun. So I actually think that this is going to be a really crazy offseason and a lot of serious talk, but it's up to those three. I think there's going to be a conversation. I think they're going to sit and say, what do you guys want to do? And they're going to let them make the decision. Do you want us to keep building? But Kyle Dubas didn't go out and get anybody to surround them outside of their top five up front and outside of their three defensemen. They're weak. They're really weak. And unfortunately, Kyle's going to have a lot of work to do.
I mean, I felt like by the time they got rid of, Brian Dumoulin and they lost, a lot of those guys, I thought, okay, this is it. This is finally the time. And then, oh no, they fooled us again. And it's just like, it almost kind of feels like, and I hate saying this, but this almost feels like the Philadelphia Phillies effect with Ruben Amaro Jr. Because it's just like, You still tell me that Chase Utley and Jimmy Rollins and Ryan Howard are still going to provide the Phillies to get the playoffs? Hell no, they're not. Like, this is too old. This is not the 2008 Phillies. So, like, in the same aspect with the Penguins, hopefully they can get this right in the offseason. But, man, I just felt like they got completely fleeced and undressed, and they better make up for it in the offseason. But it'll be interesting moving forward. But appreciate you coming on, man. Evan, we've been waiting to do this, man, because, again, when Key, I give shout-outs to Key, man, because she's told me, like, you guys have got to collaborate on hockey because you both are on the same pages and you know what's going on. But for a side note for you, because I think you'd love this, because since you've been around the hockey world and you've seen a lot of these youngsters now become grown men, funny story for you is, like, my wife, her name's Cami. She actually got her name from Cami Granato.
No way. Yes.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. The wife of Ray Ferraro.
Yep, exactly. And she's still there around in the Avalanche. So I've seen that. And then I told her, I said, Joe Sakic is still the GM over there. So you still got some familiarity in Colorado. But, man, it's a hockey town up over here. I know I'm in enemy territory, but still, I remind people, I'm like, you know who won the cup last year. So appreciate you coming on, man. Appreciate you. Man. Where can people find you as well for Two Guys in Hockey Talk, especially when I know Powell's in the comments and he loves to get at least a little bit of that showcase, man.
Yeah. He's my marketing boy. So you can follow us over on X. I call it Twitter now on steroids. So you can follow me at Renaerts. You can follow my co-host Pavel, the cat. I don't call him the cat because he's got cat-like reflexes like Felix Potvin, but because he's always got a cat in the background somewhere, sometime, and we learned that during the pandemic. So he's a great guy. You can follow him at hockey_2. You can follow us on Facebook at Two Guys in Hockey Talk. You also check out our website at twoguysinhockeytalk.com. You can check out some of our guests that have been on if you want to connect, follow, as well as you can check us out on our YouTube channel, all of our series over the last 4 seasons since we started our work. Appreciate, you guys just follow us on all the social media venues. And we appreciate anything you're doing. And by the way, Jake, we've been talking about getting you on the show. So yes. I might have some openings in mid-May coming up. So I will send you out a note and let's see if we can line something up on a Wednesday night with you.
Oh, I love it, man, because you know me. By the time we get that going, I'm ready to drop the gloves and I'm ready to just come on up on the show. I will say, though, man, because I'll tell you, next month I've got Kim Becker from Altitude Sports that's going to be coming up on there. So
sweet.
I'd like to hear her insights with the Colorado Avalanche because especially with hockey playoffs coming up around the corner.
Do you have a date on that one? Do you guys have a date with her coming on? Specific?
Not quite yet, but I believe it might be the start of April. So I will definitely send that link up over to you, man. But that'd be great. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on. We'll definitely catch you soon.
Okay, as we say all the time at Two Guys in Hockey Talk, in the meantime and in between time, keep your stick on the ice.
There you go. Keep the stick on the ice, guys. You know the importance of it. So, I know I ran longer than I wanted to, but you know what? We got a hell of a show tonight. We had a hell of a show. So John Buttner, who came up on, little good high school reunion for the two of us. But man, it was great. Absolutely a great episode. Definitely going to catch all of this stuff on record as well. We have it up on recording, so I'm excited about that as well. But appreciate all of you guys. John Buttner, Evan Renaerts. Such good interviews, man. I was fired up and excited about it, but appreciate all of you guys for stopping on by. Like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button, keep you notified on future and past shows. We are 2 followers away from 300 on TikTok, so let's go. We're almost there to a milestone, but we are 12 subs away from a historical 600. Let's go. We're almost there, folks. Appreciate you guys' loving support for the show. We're going to be keeping it going up from here. We may have at least a show on Thursday, so you don't want to miss that. Our own Cool McCain from Sports Wave Network is also going to be joining us here talking about the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, so you don't want to end up missing that. Jake Silva signing off on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Have a great rest of your night, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Take care, guys.